June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and as we turn to the back half of June, we look at some of the dynamics that implicate men's health and really speak to some of the issues that are occurring. One of the things that we really have to reckon with is the fact that a lot of male suffering isn't necessarily pathology. It's not something that is a problem because it's something that is innate to men. Really, what we're seeing is the collateral damage from a society that exploits, silences, and rewrites male instinct through soft power, algorithmic rejection, and weaponized care. And as we begin this discussion, let's start normalizing some simple language. Again, this isn't to sound as if anybody is in any way looking to self-harm, but there are nights when I've heard it a lot through my own male clients and myself. There are nights where we lie awake and we have these intrusive thoughts where we start to think to ourselves that perhaps our kids would be better off without us, that they would have better opportunities if we weren't around. Our families could potentially have better outcomes. These are very real thoughts, intrusive thoughts that happen when we are confronted with some of the failures that society has mirrored back to us. This is not necessarily a pathology that lives within men, but a quiet response to the way society has shifted to pathologize men and their behavior. That's not to say that there are men out there that could use some recalibration and cognitive growth, and that's why PrecisionCycle exists. But if we're looking at the dynamics as they exist, there's a lot of self-harm ideation with men, not as a mental illness in a vacuum. It's the consequence of chronic systemic invalidation that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I have personal experience with this. I'm sure there are other men who have personal experience with this, how our passion is pathologized and turned into us being extra or too aggressive rather than people recognizing our true selves. As we look at and navigate the world of men's mental health, let's take today as a understanding of how society is impacting men's mental health, because this is a product of men's lack of cognitive structures and growth, but it's also a product of a ever-changing mental health landscape that continues to alienate men, demonize men, make them expendable, and make them silent. And if that's you, please stick around because we're going to talk about that in today's Precision Cycle. We're going to talk about how mental health as it's structured today is not built to handle real men's mental health issues. And we're going to talk about how PrecisionCycle is the answer to men's mental health. Thank you for joining me. Today is Monday the 16th as we explore men's mental health. This is PrecisionCycle brought to you by Elevate.epo. I'm Enrique. Let's open it up. So in the intro, I called out how we haven't normalized the chronic systemic invalidation of men. If we look at the literature, Christopher Latch in The Culture of Narcissism, he wrote that most of what we're experiencing isn't depression. It's collapse under narcissistic cultural expectations. And what that means is that we are given such high levels of expectations to meet as men in modern society that when we're unable to meet them, we naturally have this very regressive way of looking at ourselves, which questions our worth and our ability. That is something that Jung would write about a lot, the shadow work, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But if we go back and understand narcissism is baked in the cake here from the American experience, we see how this has created entities where men are having to readjust themselves to meet artificial social positions that are pathological. What does that look like? It looks like the triple bind of modern men. If you go online right now and casually look through social media and happen to have just dating and reality type of content delivered to you, what you're going to see is a society that has normalized how men have to make $10,000 a week to be worthy of respect. That is something that has been a product of female narcissism, quite frankly, women who don't want to go out and to this world and actually build and develop themselves into something tangible and would rather have this lifestyle of being taken care of by a man. That's not controversial to say, because how many women don't go to university, get a degree, just so that they can end up being housewives? In modern society, they're known as MRS degrees, because a lot of women go to college and spend all this money on education only to raise family and be a housewife and be domesticated. Not saying that's negative, but at the same time, this is where the pressure starts accumulating, that we have an expectation, regardless of the educational outcomes of individuals, the man is still going to provide, even though the female has this very capable degree that can also yield dividends. But we see how that financial pressure has become tantamount with men. So now if you're not going out there and doing Bitcoin, influencing people and creating scam courses to rip people off, then you're not a good man. You're not someone who is going to be able to gain a following and have women be attracted to them, because that is the new standard. That sort of leads us to how society in general has made it so that men have to suppress their passion to be, quote, emotionally safe. You're not passionate about your work, you're difficult to deal with because you happen to say things that are true, and you happen to say them to people who don't have their own self-calibration models to not project their anxieties and fears towards you. This is why oftentimes we are left having to over-explain ourselves, because that becomes us having to calm down someone else's fears. We see how our passion is turned into, oh, you just ego lift. Oh, you're just into money, or you just want to have all these goals that are so superficial. No, these are things that we as men are grown and pre-programmed. The built-in software into us has given us this insight that we are destined for something. And when we express ourselves and align ourselves with that destiny, we are often looked at as toxic men, which then leads us to how men have had to explain themselves oftentimes to people who have never sacrificed anything in their life. Men are made to explain their dreams to people who don't have the discipline, have never experienced life as a man, don't know the innate energetic fields that are created when men are present. We are driven by concepts since birth, but modern society wants to pathologize that. When we look at that through the psychodynamic lens, if we go back to Winnicott, Donald Winnicott wrote that this is how we build false selves of ourselves. When society rewards submission rather than authenticity, we are left splitting into the version of ourselves that is easy to digest at the expense of the part of ourselves that is true. Thus, why we are so depressed, because we are literally living our inauthentic self. You are literally living your inauthentic self as we speak, because your hopes and dreams are being throttled and stifled by people who have never done half the work you have. Yet they feel the need to put you down or give you advice when they themselves have never done it. And so we're left with us as men trying to figure out the world. And we're told, okay, you have these issues that society has put on you because you are just reacting to how society is changing and adapting in a way that isn't as pathologically consistent with how fast the pathology of society is changing. And so we are told, okay, go out and get therapy. So we go out and we get therapy, and we look at psychology today, or we ask our friends and they give us a referral, and 8 times out of 10, you're going to get a woman as a therapist. And this sort of leads to, again, before we begin, this isn't to say that this is a gender issue. What this is, we're just pointing out the obvious here. 8 in 10 mental health providers are female, which means mental health today isn't about healing. It's about behavioral compliance. It's designed by women who've never carried male pressure, yet are pathologizing that pressure. This is very plainly seen by most of our mental health apparatus in society. A lot of women preaching a lot of female-oriented self-help, applying that to men, and then we wonder why men aren't complying. Get help when it's available, because the help isn't geared towards men. It's geared towards people with softer sensibilities that have never had to balance the life and death issues men have to balance. And I'm not being facetious, and I'm not being overly dramatic and histrionic about that. Being a man in today's society means having to walk downtown at 1 a.m. by yourself and having to navigate people trying to rob you, trying to kill you because you're a man. It means having to go and fight wars in faraway lands that other people don't want to do. How are we supposed to, as men, ever come to a place to process all that with people who have never experienced a tenth of that type of energy, a tenth of that type of stimulus that gives us our male drive? And thus, therapy rewards female expression and punishes male clarity. That's the ultimate takeaway I can get from my experience in the industry. When a man isn't willing to engage in a deer man exercise or doesn't want to sit there and do box breathing in some mindfulness protocol, because we understand what the problem is and we'd rather just speak to the issue and process that, we are pathologized about it. We're difficult to treat. We're difficult to deal with. We're men that don't want help, as opposed to men who aren't receiving the appropriate help from narcissistic providers. And so then men are gaslit into over-talking and underacting. This is the dynamic in play. We look at this from a Lacanian's perspective. Male identity is recognized by a system that defines health in female terms. And if we bring in Jessica Benjamin in her work from 1988, The Bonds of Love, Psychoanalysis, Feminism, and the Problem of Domination, she writes how the equality partnership frame becomes dominance when a man is never mirrored back his masculinity by a woman, meaning a woman decides that she wants to mirror back overt dominance on top of masculinity, an artificial sense of dominance. This feminizes masculinity. We are made literally to hide behind our wives, girlfriends, moms' skirts. And this is what Jessica Benjamin back in 1988 was talking about, was that this partnership is mostly a sham, because oftentimes men are not part of the equation. And I'm making a lot of generalities here, perhaps, but we see this in play today, because if we look at how dating apps has feminized the rejection machine, this all comes together. You know, the 3-to-1 male to female ratio right now when it comes to dating apps. Women, 45% match rate is usually what they get. So when they swipe, half the time they're going to get matched. Men, 3% match rate, meaning you need to swipe 100 times just to maybe get 3 matches. If we use the Bumble example, women initiate and men have to wait. What does that mean? 35% of men are paying just to be seen, for the privilege of being brought up on someone's phone and then potentially swiped left on. You're not paying for dates. You're paying not to feel like scam. That's really what Bumble's core business proposition has become. It speaks to the feminized rejection machine industrial complex that has resulted out of mental health. Because there's a reason why they're called shrinks, right? Society trains men to shrink, literally. They use Bumble to show how it's algorithmically enforced. Dating apps are just therapy with better UI. Female run, male gaslighting, and soul crushing. The reason your experience with the mental health provider didn't work out as a man, it's the same reason why you're not successful at Bumble, because it's designed that way. It's designed to not see you. It's designed to not take your pain seriously. It's designed to caricaturize you, make you into some kind of a meme, and then throw you away. And so the reason you're single isn't your fault. The reason you're single is because society has created narcissism as acceptability in feminism. We have to come back to relationship dynamics and the female narcissism in those dynamics. Society sees the crying woman, but never the man holding the structure together. So you're always going to see the classic example of this is the woman who's always complaining that I have a job, I go to work, I come home, I'm still expected to cook, clean, do the dishes, do the laundry, whatever. And I'm not saying that's appropriate. If you have a relationship where you and your partner are able to constructively create some kind of a split and case model there, and you're able to split that work, then absolutely, men should 100% participate in the domestic elements of relationship. But here's the thing. When do you ever consider what the man brings to the table? Men are the ones who usually are on the roof fixing the leak when it's time to do that. Men are the ones outside usually mowing the lawn and taking care of the landscape so that the house is presentable. Men are the ones who, when the engine light comes on, takes the car to get the oil change, has a regular service on elements where women don't necessarily have to think about their world. And thus, we see how oftentimes those things are not as evident and they're not as respected as, hey, I cooked and cleaned today. How come you can't respect me? No, I literally just went and put up a fence and I'm still treated like some kind of a child. This is society. This is the thing that we don't see. We don't equate and we don't look at it from a comparable, equitable perspective. Because again, they're trying to pathologize the female experience to gain clout. That's the takeaway. And so see how modern dating, women act as gatekeepers of legitimacy. Masculine tension is labeled as toxic while female distress is sanctified. If we go to Wilhelm Reich in his work, The Mass Psychology of Fascism, we see how when masculine libido is repressed by cultural design, it comes out as either violence or deadness. Carl Jung also wrote about how the unintegrated masculine shadow becomes addiction, retreat, or rage, because power was denied, not abused. And so that gets us to, if modern therapy isn't going to work, personally, the modern therapeutic element, very plainly I saw it, was something that did not benefit and was then geared towards men. We would sit there and I would listen to my colleagues after I would give my case presentation on a man, sit there and listen to providers give me feedback about how I should apply more female-focused interventions, which weren't going to be appropriate for any of the cases that I brought forward. But you could see how the default thinking was to, hey, if I just implement this thing that is geared towards 80% of practitioners and primarily towards one demographic, that's cookie cutter. It's one size fits all. That's why mental health fails. As far as my old residential treatment center, they had 2 locations. The one in Arcadia has male patients. And if you talk to any provider there, you would see how men in that program suffered extraordinarily because they were being treated by women who had never had any real masculine presence or experience right out of school. And these women were supervised by other women who specialized primarily with female eating disorder topics and pathologies and presentations. They were given the exact same treatment to men and wondering out loud why they were acting like spoiled women. This is the disconnect people never understood. How we can't have these dual mixed co-ed programs, not so much because we're not supposed to have men and women living together, but primarily because men and women have 2 very distinct, unique ways of emotional processing. And because of that, when you try to make it overly soft, men will either fall into that softness and become even more narcissistic, or will flat out refuse it and become violent, thus still being narcissistic. We are left in a no-win position, primarily because modern is not training clinicians that actually treat male symptoms. Even as a man going to school, I sat there in classes and still had to listen to the same nonsense, or I knew exactly that this intervention would not work with the man, but yet that was the training by my professors. And so that's why I left, because modern mental health is not here to help men. What is here to help men PrecisionCycle. PrecisionCycle is the solution because it's threat assessment calibration. Here's the thing. At PrecisionCycle, we don't look at your assertiveness as toxicity, okay? We look at it as your voice. We don't look at boundaries as aggression. We look at it as proper relationship calibration methods to bring back energy and power into harmony. We look at leadership as unflinching presence. It's not toxic because leadership is safety, and safety is what women want. If we go back to making 10K a day and not wanting someone to be out of pocket and a provider, what that means is safety. That's what leadership is. So the world doesn't need softer men, okay? It needs integrated men. Soft men, it's not okay to be weak, contrary to what the memes might tell you. It's not okay to embrace your limitations and keep telling yourself you're not capable of being more than you are. That's your mom's fear talking to you, okay? And if your dad happens to say that stuff to you, that's because he has become so, it's unfortunate to use this word, bitch made, that he himself is projecting his fear onto you. Thus, you don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to become softer by going to therapy. You need to go to someone like me that can help you integrate and use your power to reclaim your life in a way that is qualitatively improved. As men, we're often told that our instincts are dangerous, but maybe they say that because they're scared. We really have to start calling out how this country has pacified men and made them really soft. And it's overt performative softness. There's this trauma cosplay that we want to engage in. And that's really just intellectualized cowardice. It's not having any, it's just built-in apprehension. It's making sure that we stay stuck in all the things that keep us repressed, as opposed to working towards a future where we're able to express our full selves. And thus, you have to understand, if you're a man listening to me right now, as we are in the middle of Men's Mental Health Month, you need to understand that you're not the problem. You're the power source that weak people keep draining. Weak men, weak women, your weak mom, dad, sister, brother, etc. You're the power source they keep draining. Why? Because they understand they're weak and they see you as strong. Rather than project, I see your strength and I see how strong you are, they project their own weakness into you. Your strength scares me. Thus, I have to make you shrink. And so, really, if you're still hiding behind a woman, the war is already lost, because you're not geared towards being your true self. You're geared towards being safe. You're geared towards being quiet, dull, and you might as well just numb yourself out with all kinds of THC or alcohol, disassociate and tamp down that part of yourself that wants to fully express itself, that wants to be alive and show the world that I'm a man, I have power, I have the ability to do these great things. But I've been talked out of it by all these weak losers who keep holding me down. And that's the thing that we need to understand about men's mental health, is that we are being held down by weak losers. They're not the ones out there lifting. They're not the ones out there doing it. They're the ones out there that just bitch and complain about their own lives and are too scared to do anything about it. And if you're a man listening to me right now, you know what? Keep going to the gym. Keep being the guy who is that person and expressing yourself and makes yourself hurt, because you know what? You're not toxic and you're not some kind of a misogynist. You are just a man exercising your power in a constructive way. Because what this world needs from a mental health perspective, and especially from a men's mental health perspective, are strong men. They don't need more weakness. They need people to go out there and be about that action. Because this world is becoming a world where that is going to be the currency that we are going to be trading on. We're reaching a post-therapeutic and a post-mental health model here, because there have been enough people to come on board and say, yeah, that whole thing is a scam. That whole industry is built to keep women satiated with their own shortcomings. And if you want to have a discussion about that, go back and read Freud. We can't sit here and say, oh, Freud isn't valid. No, he is valid. The whole reason that the mental health industry exists is because he wrote what he wrote. So to dismiss him is false, because if you go back and you look at Freud, then he's saying you need to just man up and handle your business. That's the takeaway. We could talk about how great men's mental health awareness is, but are we really aware of what is causing men's mental health? And unless we're talking about the fact that the mental health industry is dominated by women and estrogen is being delivered to men who very much need testosterone guided calibration, then there's no wonder why we're going to have the breakdowns in mental health within our masculine population. If you want full recalibration, if you really want to deal with all the issues in your head as a man, those intrusive thoughts, but you want to do it through the lens of actual masculinity, come to PrecisionCycle, because we don't pathologize your fire. We don't pathologize your drive. We encourage you to become the best fully calibrated version of yourself, because that is what Lacan talks about is what mental health is. That is what Jung talks about what mental health is. That is what Winnicott talks about what mental health is. That is what every psychological thinker that is willing to write it on a piece of paper says. So with that, I hope that you have been given some food for thought here. Men's mental health, yes, there is an awareness, but the awareness comes in understanding that we're truly not fixing men's mental health with what we currently have out in the market. Because what we have out in the market is only designed to make you softer and to make you start thinking like women. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's Precision Cycle. It's been great to have this space to talk about and what the causes of men's mental health crises are. Hopefully we can have a bigger discussion about it. I don't want this to come off as if it is some kind of misogynist rant. It's not. What this is a very clear sort of just observation of the fact that the industry is a certain way. PrecisionCycle can help you navigate life in a different way. If you're struggling with mental health issues, don't go to your local community health center, because all they're going to do is show you some breathing techniques and tell you to start thinking differently. Come to PrecisionCycle. 7-dimensional aspects of your personality. We measure that. We calibrate it. We give you the data on a piece of paper that shows you a score, tells you where you're at, tells you how to fix yourselves, tells you how to move forward. That's what PrecisionCycle does. It's not some mental health where you're going to sit on the couch and you're going to be there for a year talking about your feelings. You're going to come in, talk to me for one day, and with that, we're going to set forward a path that will get you to your best life. Guaranteed. Why? Because we utilize your own personality strengths rather than try to strip those parts away. There's no need for you to change who you are. There's no need for you to tamp down your fire because some people have trouble dealing with you. You are fine the way you are. You just need to understand that you have to stop explaining yourself to people who aren't worth it. And once you do that, once you have the boundary regime where you can tell your wife to get lost in a respectful way, where you can tell your boss to eat it in a respectful way, when you can tell that clinician they're wrong because they don't understand what you are thinking, that is power. Power is being fully integrated and understanding that people are not who they say they are, but you are. If you're interested and ready, reach out. Enrique at elevateepo.com, PrecisionCycle TV on YouTube, PrecisionCycle on TikTok and Instagram. I'm ready to receive your phone call, your text for the June calibration call. We have a special this month. If you're tired of not being noticed by the women in your life, if you're tired of being put down because you have too much fire, if you're tired of being pathologized because you happen to have a certain perspective in the world, come to PrecisionCycle. We will help you recalibrate yourself so that you can move forward without any fear as your true, authentic self. Thank you very much. Today's been a great opportunity to introduce this topic, and I hope that we can have a bigger discussion moving forward. We'll be back on Wednesday for another episode of PrecisionCycle. I hope you will join us then. And thank you very much. Have a great week.